And yeah, so essentially, I just wanted to lay a framework for what human design is in case any of you are new to it. So I know that you are all familiar with astrology, and you'll see in the chart that astrology has a strong backbone of human design. And then with the astrology, there's also the chakra system, but instead of there being 7 centers like the chakra system, there's actually going to be 9 centers. So there's an extra 2. The Chinese I Ching is also part of the system. And so if you guys are familiar with the I Ching or the Chinese Book of Life, essentially it's made up of 64 universal life lessons. And those make up what we call the gates and the channels in human design, which I'll show you on a chart in just a minute. But basically, when you have certain gates out of the 64 activated, it means that those are the energies that you're really here to embody and to learn about and to share with other people in this lifetime. And so those out of the 64, you'll have a handful of them switched on. And you'll notice that some of those lines in the chart are red, where other parts are black. And so anything that's black in the chart, we say is a more conscious energy. It's something that we're more aware of consciously, whereas anything in red, we actually are unconscious of it. And it's material that we inherited from our ancestors. So we can see family patterns on the red side of the chart. We can see things that we inherited from our parents, our grandparents, way back into our ancestry. And what's really interesting is if any of you guys happen to know the birth time of your grandparents, often you'll have similar charts to that of your grandparents, which is kind of cool. It kind of like skips a generation, but you'll notice a similarity there. Um, and yeah, there's also the Kabbalistic tree of life is also part of it. So essentially what human design did is Ra'uru, who channeled human design, essentially he put all of these ancient systems that have been used for thousands and thousands of years and kind of made one big hybrid system and put all the best parts of it together so that we can really have a good synthesized picture of why your soul incarnated into the planet at this time. And not only that, what I really like about human design compared to, say, just looking at a natal chart is you get an idea of how to actually use your unique energy and how to strategically use it on a day-to-day basis. So say you have a lot of openness and maybe more mutable energy. How do you safeguard yourself and your energy and not take on things from other people if you're more sensitive? Human design has a lot to say about how to work with the world, the energy, and the people around you in a way that's going to feel most in alignment with who you came here to be. And so that's what I really like about it is it's just such an integrated system. And I like that we have a good mix of really all the types. We don't have any manifestors or manifesting generators. So I'll go over those too. But just before we really dive into the chart, do any of you have any pressing questions about human design, that things that you've wondered about that you want me to cover in the presentation? Or not so much, you guys are just wanting to learn? Okay, awesome. I can do that too. So basically, I'm going to just pull up different charts that I have loaded here so that you guys can get a visual of each of the types. And I'll spend more time on the energy types that we have present here today. There's only 5 of them, so we will be able to cover them. But I'm going to start with generators since that's the most common type out of all of them. Over 70% of people are generators. Looks like we have somebody else joining. Hi, so happy you can make it. We're just diving in and I'm just going over the 5 energy types, so you didn't miss much.
Okay, awesome. Hello, everybody.
Hi, what's your energy type? Do you know?
Oh, I don't remember, honestly.
Oh, that's totally fine. I didn't mean to put you on the spot.
No worries. Yeah, which one is that? Is it the manifester and generator and all those? Is those energy types?
Mhm.
I think I'm a pure generator.
Oh, perfect. Okay. So yeah, we have a few generators on, and I'm going to be pulling up the chart so you can kind of see a visual of what each of the chart looks like. And I'm using my body graph to do that. If you want to check in on your chart. But yeah, manifesting generators and generators make up 70% of the population. So it's a super prominent energy type that you're gonna encounter. So the projectors and the reflectors on the call, it's good for you guys to know about this type just because you're most likely surrounded by them day in and day out. And you guys tend to take on a lot of energy from them, and I'll explain what that means in a bit. And so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And let's see. Okay, so I have my chart pulled up here to start. So I'm a generator too. And so it can be a bit confusing because even though manifesting generators are their own type, they are still under the generator umbrella, if that makes sense. And so as a generator, the reason that somebody is a generator is because they're going to have this square right here colored in. So that's what we call the sacral center. And so this is really the main kind of energy center in the human design chart. It gives the most consistent energy of any of the other 9 centers. And so you'll notice here that I have quite a few centers colored in here. And then I have quite a few white. And so any center that you have in your chart that is colored in, we call that defined. And so defined centers, you're going to experience whatever is lit up within that center. So in the numbers, you're going to be feeling that 24/7. And then not only do you feel it, but then you transmit that energy out into the world. So I like to call the defined centers like the transmitter. And then the white open centers, that's the receiver. It receives energy from the people around them, the environment, the foods or the things that you ingest. And also, you know, for the astrology lovers, that's where you're going to take in all the cosmic energy. And so I notice just working with this for a few years that when there's a difficult transit, I'll notice it a lot more in my open centers than I do things where I have a lot more definition because I'm more guarded or protected there and I'm not taking in as much. And so that's something to note is the first thing you want to do when you look at your chart is just notice what centers are white or open and what centers are filled in. And so, yeah, that's where you take in the other. But the white centers aren't any sort of weakness or bad thing or anything like that. It's just the energy centers that you've really come here to learn about and to master. And they're also energy centers that you're going to have more dynamic range in. So you're going to experience the energy in a variety of ways based on the people you're around, the people you interact with, and the environment that you're in. And so let's just take my first open center here. That's what we call the head center. And so having an open head center, I'm going to be taking in all the ideas and opinions and thoughts from the world and the people around me. And if I'm not guarding that energy, then I can go into information overload because I'm so open there, you know, with the nodes in Gemini and Sagittarius. If you have these open, it's definitely something to take note of because with all of our, we notice this on the Discord group all the time. We're taking in so much information. There's so much information constantly flying around that you can easily take all of it in, and then it's kind of like the center will overheat and it's like, okay, we need to go chill and we need to go do something else because it just gets to be too much. And so how stuck energy can manifest in this center is it can feel like literally a pressure headache, like there's pressure building in the head. Because this is what we call a pressure center in human design. And so whether you have the center open or closed, you're going to feel pressure to do something with all the energy in the head. And so all the energy that's going through this center, it always wants to go and be expressed through the throat as an idea or as a way of expressing yourself, literally talking it out. Or the throat is also the center of action. So, when we're in this like Neptune square the nodes fog and we don't know which way in life we want to go next, we get really antsy and we want to make a decision and we want to do something with all this information. But if we don't have clarity before we act, it can actually set us back quite a bit. And so that's where I really do like how human design describes how each type best makes decisions, because then we can bypass all of that confusion no matter what transit is going on. We can always tune into our own unique intuition and to help lead the way. And what I've found, especially in the energy of January and just kind of that limbo in between energy, is sometimes, the gut is just simply saying, you need to wait out this energy and wait for clarity, and it's not the time to act. And that's what I've been getting a lot from clients, and I've experienced it a lot myself. And so that's just something to be aware of is, sometimes it's not the best time to act. And so then we're going to skip over the other centers for now, just as we go through the types. But if any questions come up, just feel free to interrupt me. I'm not really looking at the chat at the moment because I'm looking at my screen. So just holler at me and stop me if you have any questions. Otherwise, I'll just continue rattling off. You guys feeling okay so far? Awesome. Okay, so as a generator, the way that you want to tune into your own bodily awareness to make decisions is going to be in that sacral center right there, because the sacral center is really there to be your internal GPS. It's your internal compass, your higher self that is constantly scanning the environment and responding to everything in it. So from the moment you wake up in the morning to the moment you go to bed, you're constantly responding to things, and the sacral or your gut response is telling you, yes, I really like that thing resonates, or no, I don't think that thing is for me, let's pivot and do something else. And so it's constantly giving you this feedback, which ends up being really helpful, because then you have this like internal red flag if you are going off track, instead of wasting time and going down the wrong path without realizing it. So it's an internal feedback mechanism. And so the strategy for the generator then is to respond. And so it sounds really counterintuitive, because we're taught that, we always want to go after life and take action. But actually, the best thing that a generator and a manifesting generator can do is to wait for life to come to them and then to take action and respond based on what their gut is telling them. Because what I find with generators is a lot is that they tend to get very ahead of themselves and want to plan too much into the future. And because of that, they tend to make the wrong decisions, and they need to actually wait for the options to come to them, for the universe to kind of give them the signal that it's time to go ahead and take action in life. Otherwise, they can find themselves frustrated, which is why it says the not self theme for the generator is frustration. And so me personally, when I'm trying to make a decision, I also have to wait out my emotional wave, because my authority, which tells me more about my decision-making strategy, is that of the solar plexus, which is the emotional center. So if you have this center right here in the right-hand corner colored in, that means that you will be influenced by your emotions when you're trying to make decisions. And so if you have that filled in, you're automatically going to have emotional authority. And about half the population does. And so if you run into that person that that says yes, they're going to make it, and then they kind of decide last minute that they don't want to, or you find yourself committing to things and wishing you hadn't, it's probably a sign that you committed to something when you were feeling either emotionally too good or emotionally not so good. And so you ended up making maybe not the best choice in that moment. And so with emotional authority, it's always best to wait for clarity, to find that emotional neutral point before making a decision. Otherwise, you might have buyer's remorse. And so the best thing to do if you have emotional authority, no matter what your type, if you're a generator or a manifesting generator, what have you, is you want to really sleep on things, and you want to wait it out and make sure that you're not on an emotional wave before committing. And that's especially if the thing that you're committing to is going to require a lot of your time or energy. So is that making sense so far, guys? Does that resonate with anybody? Any of you with emotional authority?
I'm an emotional authority. I feel like I've not really developed a lot of clarity on mine, and my gate is the 3955 for that.
Okay. Oh, okay. Yeah. So you feel like you don't have clarity on how to ride out the wave. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, like I'm never quite sure like when it's over.
Yeah. So typically, with that, it's going to be something that kind of builds and builds and builds incrementally. It hits a peak and then it slowly peters out. And so it can be very much this like slow build and then like a crash. And so what's really good to pay attention to at that is what in particular sets off your wave. So is it so for some it could be like the full moon, for some it could be a specific type of person or a task that they have to do, or an email from somebody, or traffic. And so it's just good to note down what sets off your wave. And then in terms of you don't know when it ends, usually it's not going to last more than about 48 hours. It's going to start tapering off. And then if you're still having trouble reaching clarity on a decision, it's because you've felt all those emotions when trying to sort something out and get clarity, you're not going to feel 100% sure about your decision, because you've literally felt within your body the pros and the cons. So they say that you'll only reach about 80% clarity on that. And so that's something that can come into play. And then do you know if you have a defined head center or open?
I only have my solar plexus and my root defined.
Oh, okay. Solar plexus and root. Yeah. So the other thing that's probably coming into play, well, two things that I'm thinking of actually, is with that open head, that's also something that you'll only feel 80% certain about what you're thinking and the thoughts going through your head. You can kind of get into a thought loop where you may get confused about what you're feeling within. So what's your let's see, so you have solar plexus authority and you're a projector. Yeah, so I can see how that'd get confusing, because the root is then going to come in, and that's the other pressure center in human design. So that root can put pressure on you to make that decision and to hurry up. It's like the center of stress and adrenaline, so it's very fast paced. And so you could just be feeling pressure from the root. And once you identify where the pressure is coming from and why, you can kind of sort through it and see, what's getting in the way of that clarity, and not being afraid to wait it out as long as you need. It's going to be different for everybody. I hope that helped.
Yeah, that was actually really good. Thank you.
Awesome. Great. Any other questions, guys? That was a great question.
For the newbies here, can you like just briefly, I guess, go through the centers, like what each one is? You don't have to explain it, just I guess name them. So
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's a
that mind
great
too.
question. Yeah, absolutely. And so let's just take it from the top. So I went over the head center. And so this one is the ajna. And so this is where, so if the head center is our thoughts, visualize the thoughts like streaming in. That's where we get creative inspiration and downloads and hopes and dreams and thoughts. But then the ajna takes all of that and forms it into concepts and ideas that are actually practical and usable. So it's not just like a thought in your head. You can actually do something with it and categorize it and filter it in some way and bring it together. And so that's what the ajna is. It's where our concepts are formed, our rationale. It's where we really process all of those ideas. And then going down here, this is the throat center. And so as I was mentioning before, the throat center is really where we express ourselves. It can be verbally, but it's our main form of self-expression. It's the center of manifestation. So it's actually where action happens too, funnily enough. And so it's where our thoughts turn into action. And so all the energy in your chart is constantly being pushed to the throat. So if you find you have a lot of issues with expressing yourself, with the throat, with constantly getting a sore throat or a frog in your throat or a lump in your throat, that's usually a sign that there's a lot of energy building up that needs to be released in some way, and you need to express it in some way, whether it be journaling or talking it out or going for a run. And so then we get down here to this diamond, and this is the identity center. And it's really what they call the magnetic monopole in human design. And that's just a fancy way of saying it's like our internalized compass. It's our identity. It's where we find direction and love. And so there can be a lot of wounding around love and identity and direction here. And I've seen a lot of clients coming to me with issues here because they don't know where they want to live. They're in between relationships. They haven't found their place. And this can be harder if the center is open, like here. You take on a lot of other people's stories through this center. And so now we go to this center here, which is this little red triangle, which is the heart or ego center. This center is associated with our finances, with asking for what we're worth, with the ego and a healthy sense of ego. So having an equal energy exchange in our relationships. It's where our worthiness is. So whether or not we feel valued and worthy in our relationships and in our work. And then here, as I mentioned before, this is the solar plexus. It's all about emotions and our emotions and other people's emotions. We may take on others' emotions if this is white, or we have a lot of our own emotions going on that's going to be fueled by whatever center is connected to it. In my case, it's connected to my money center. So issues around money or finances or charging or value in career can trigger emotional wave for me. So you were saying before, is it Anastasia?
It's Anastasia.
Anastasia, you were saying before that your root is connected to your solar plexus. And so that can be a good idea, that channel of what is triggering those emotions for you. And so that's good to look at there. But yeah, going back to the centers, we have the sacral, of course, which I said is like it's kind of like the Energizer Bunny battery. It has the most life force and consistent energy available to that person to really go after what they love. People with this center defined, they are kind of the workhorses of the world. They're here to really master their work. Work is really, really important to people who have this center defined, and they often won't feel super fulfilled unless they've found the work that really lights them up and inspires them. And that doesn't have to be work in the traditional like Capricorn sense of work, you know, especially as we're going into Aquarius. This is going to look like a lot of things. It could be being a parent. It could be, you know, I've talked about this with clients recently. It can be internal work. It could be working on yourself. Self-mastery is also in this center. So spiritual practice can really light these people up. And then over here, this is one of my favorite centers. This is the spleen center, which is the center of intuition. It's our sixth sense. It's also the center of fear and insecurity. It's our survival center. So whatever is lit up in this center are fears that we need to work through and overcome in order to reach our highest potential. It also gives us a sense of what's good for us and what's not good for us. So if we feel a sense of peace and calm somewhere, that's the spleen saying that, yes, this is a good location. This is a good person for you. If you're feeling uneasy and anxious, or you feel this like instant wave of energy come over you that's uneasy, that's a sign to kind of get out of there, and that isn't good for you at this time for whatever reason. And then we have the root, which, as I had mentioned, is the center of stress and adrenaline, but it's also the center of drive. It's what drives us to evolve and to get better than we were before. It's the center of ambition. And, you know, people with this center define they'll sense that they move a little bit quicker than people who have it open. There's a great drive to succeed here. And now I want to mention that we all are going to experience all the energies of each of the 9 centers. It's just that if it's open, we're not going to experience them in a consistent way. Whereas if we do have it defined, it'll show up for us in a consistent way that we can rely upon. And then, you know, of course, based on who we're around, you know, us being in this group together, if we were to combine all of our charts, all of these centers would be lit up, and we're all feeling each other's energy. And it really does affect the way that you show up in the world based on who you're around. The people in your life are activating different centers, and it can actually be a really powerful tool to pull up somebody's chart and see how you guys line up and how you guys interact and how you can partner with each other, say in like a business partnership. You know, it's always great if you have the sacral defined together. So you're going to have a lot of energy to succeed in the project, especially for you projectors and reflectors out there. So you can get that extra energy boost to see it through. And then, you know, it's always good to have the throat connected to an energy center like the spleen, like I have here, that's speaking from intuition on the spot. Or if you have the throat connected to the heart, you can express your heart's desire. A lot of people will have their throat connected to the emotional center, which expresses, they have a very emotional tonality to them, and they express their life experience through their emotions. And so there's so many ways that this can show up. And so that's really just a very brief overview of the centers. And so, yeah, I hope that was helpful. If anybody has questions on those, feel free to speak up. Go ahead.
So my chart has red and yellow as I've only got 2 centers that are fixed. Yours are brown and red. Is there something to do with the color, or is the color just an abstract?
Yeah, there's actually no meaning to it. So yeah, the yellow is that identity center. And so that's just what they decided to do. No rhyme or reason to it, really. Yeah, good question. Anyone else? Questions? Awesome. Yeah, and so it's good to have an overview of the centers because now you'll really see how these show up in the different types. And so, like I was saying, just to finish with generators, is that it's so important for generators because they really came here to master whatever their soul incarnated to master, and to really be that like Capricornian, go up the mountain energy, take step by step um, steps towards your goals of what you're here to master. Know that you have the energy to back that up. And if you've ever felt burnt out or like you don't have the energy to see things through, as a generator, it's a sign that there's an imbalance in your life in some way, that something needs to be assessed and looked at and tweaked just a little bit. Because if there are a lot of things that you're doing in your day to day that aren't in alignment and that don't resonate and that don't light you up, like that you get a gut no response from, then that can be really depleting for generators and manifesting generators. And they'll find that they feel really burnt out and they don't know why. And so then they're scared to do what really lights them up because they're scared that they're not going to have the energy for it, when actually when they're doing what they came here to do, it actually gives them energy. And they'll be able to get it done, and it'll be like time flies by and they're so lost in what they're doing because they love it so much that they don't even notice that a couple of hours have passed. They're really good at taking in a lot of information very quickly and channeling it toward their goal. And then they're really good at carrying out the day to day. And they may master many things in this lifetime, but the interesting thing to note as a generator is that you really do have to do something to kind of get that generator motor going. And so it's so important to really start your day with a good ritual that is going to set your energy in motion in some way, because otherwise, again, it's like that sluggish, slow to get going energy. And so it's so important. I find too that if I am just kind of like go right to my phone in the morning and I'm not doing something that involves some sort of movement, or I'm not like in the kitchen making breakfast or doing something that kind of gets my motor going and gets me into that momentum of being productive, it can be really hard, and it can feel really stagnant and stifling. And that's when that not self of frustration comes in, as that alarm bell of like, okay, something needs to be tweaked here. You're feeling frustrated when you should feel like there's a sense of ease and flow and satisfaction by what you're doing on a day-to-day basis. And so that's what I want to say about generators. Any of the generators in the chat, do you have any questions? And does this resonate at all? Yes, no? Okay.
Yeah, I do. I feel like it does it does resonate.
Yeah,
I have a question though. What is that? You know how like everybody has a different profile too. So
yeah,
mine is 5-1. Is there any, I guess, insight, I guess? Like what is that
yeah,
useful for?
yeah. Yeah, let's just dive into that. So profile, just for those of you who don't know what profile is, it's basically has more detailed information about our personality and how we're supposed to carry out all of these and all this energy to realize our goals. So they call it like the costume or the archetype that we embody when we come here. And so in your case, the 5-1, the first thing I want to say is notice that you have a larger number first, the 5-1. Whereas if you see in my chart, I have a 2-4. So it's opposite. I have the smaller number first. And so in your case, the 5-1, you're really here to learn from the collective, and you grow through your interaction with the people around you. Whereas I, having the smaller number first, I actually have to do the internal work first before I can show up for the collective. So I have a more internal growth process where I have to kind of be in my own energy. And then I come out and I'm with my community and grow that way. But with the 5-1, actually you are like, I call you like the chess piece in somebody's life, where you come into their life and you completely shift the way that they see the world. So you actually act as like a big karmic energy for the people in your life. And so it's like with a 5-1, people will remember before they met you and after they met you, and they'll be transformed in some way. You'll have altered their perception. And so it sounds like a crazy thing, and it is, because there's something about the 5-1 where people will recognize that you have a certain practical knowledge to you that can be really, really helpful and beneficial to them. And so they may project upon you what they need from you. So, you know, you're their go-to person for something. And they can kind of see you as the person who can get them out of a bad spot, who can be there for them. And so the 5 really is here to take, so let me combine it, because the 5 is going to combine with the 1 in your case, where the 1 is the investigator archetype. So if you have a 1 in your profile, that means that you want a really, really solid foundation when it comes to your knowledge base. So whatever your thing is, you want to know everything about it before you utilize it and bring it to the collective, which is that 5 piece. Once you have that solid foundation, you're like, okay, guys, here's what I know. I'm going to take what I experienced and what I learned, and I'm going to universalize that information. I'm going to make it practical and go into my teacher role and teach you about it and help you guys based on what I researched in my 1 investigator time. So it's like there's 2 polar energies. So the energies of the profile, they're always going to be a little bit opposite, and then they come together in this balance. And so yeah, I love that profile. It's really ahead of its time too. You know, it kind of knows before others, and that's why it's the heretic, because other people may project upon you like, oh, that's crazy talk, or oh, I don't know about that, because like you can spot trends before they happen. So like even things like astrology, human design, not many people in the collective are aware of it. And so if you bring that to them, they're going to be like, what? It's a little bit, you know, of like an Aquarian outsider energy to it. But then you have a way of making it really practical and tangible for them. So it's awesome. Does that answer that?
Yeah, yeah, that resonates a lot. Actually, it's funny because I had a reading with Tarek too. What was it last week? And I think it was, and a
Oh,
lot of the stuff that you're saying actually kind of, it's bouncing off kind of what he told me. I have a lot of stuff going through Aquarius right now, or about to. For
wow.
like the next, I think maybe like 2 years or something like that. So
Yeah.
he said tune into that for sure. And it's funny, I totally resonate with the whole, I want to know before I put anything out there, I totally want to know what I'm talking about and all that stuff, and the whole helping people. I don't know if it comes from like my midheaven being in Pisces. I don't know what it is, but yes, that's
Oh,
all of that resonates like completely what you just said. So I'm glad I asked about that. Thank you.
yeah, that's really interesting, because like the Pisces has that kind of like they want to be like the savior, you know, they're the self-sacrificer. And so it does have that 5 energy of like, based on what people are projecting upon you, what they want, it can kind of pull that out of you. And it's interesting because, you know, midheaven is how others see you. And the 5 is also how others see you. So they do really they play together. And what I found through looking at natal charts and human design is it's like it's expressing the same kind of energy, just in slightly different language. You know, it's kind of seeing it through a slightly different lens, which I think is really helpful because it comes together in a fuller picture. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you. Thank you very much.
So
That was pretty
welcome.
awesome.
Yeah, great question. Anybody else?
Are there only 5 types, top 5 things that can be combined for that
For profile,
profile?
there's six lines and many combinations of those 6. Yeah. So not, I mean, there's not a terrible amount, but yeah. Yeah. Anyone else, just want to ask questions about their chart? I feel like actually you guys asking questions about your own chart is a good way for all of us to learn because we'll all have something in common, I think. So if not, I'll just go into projectors since I know we have a couple projectors on the line. Okay. Well, I'm going to dive into projectors then. And I'm just going to pull up what a projector chart looks like. Let's see what I've got here. Got a projector. And so you'll notice there's a lot more openness here. And actually this, this is quite a bit of definition for a projector. So you'll notice the first thing you'll notice is that this is white. And so projectors, reflectors, and manifestors are what we call the non-energy types. And that's just because they don't have the sacral center. And so a projector, actually, us generators pinging off that, we really need projectors in our lives because they're really here to guide us and show us how we can best use all of that energy. So we don't just like use the energy willy-nilly and just burn ourselves out, because projectors have an amazing approach to strategy and utilizing energy in the most efficient possible way. There's actually a lot of projector human design readers because they're really, really good at niche systems like this. So anything like astrology or human design, or even they're good managers for that reason, because they can kind of look at something that has a lot of nuts and bolts to it and boil it down into something that makes sense to them, because they're really here to discover what their niche is and really go after that so that other people can kind of invite their opinion and get their guidance on whatever it is that they're an expert at. And that's why you'll see here it says the strategy is to wait for the invitation. And so essentially, strategy is always just going to be what we can do to have the most flow in our lives so that we're not wasting a bunch of energy and meeting a bunch of resistance. And so it's just the way that we best move through life. And in the projector's instance, waiting for the invitation is a bit like waiting to respond for a generator. So instead of going out and constantly initiating and trying to get things done, to go out there and to make it happen, they want to spend a lot of time getting quiet and learning what they came here to learn, finding their niche, finding their specialty, and really just refining that skill and doing what it is that they are really drawn to and what resonates with their life purpose. And then they need to find a medium to share that gift, and so that people can invite them. And so when we say invitation, it really just means that you're waiting for the other to recognize you for who you are and for what you can offer, so that you can get the green light to give your guidance. Because projectors, that they make amazing friends, but they're the friend that always wants to give unsolicited advice. And so sometimes they can meet a lot of resistance because the person may not be ready for that advice. So they can find that the other person brushes them off or doesn't take their advice. And then they can get that not self theme of bitterness because they're like, oh my gosh, like I see it so clearly. I see how it could be done better and you're not listening. And so that's why it's really just best for projectors to really not be shy about putting what they do out there. So whether that be through social media or just in their daily job or joining groups, like this, projectors in the Discord group who are just sharing, their art or sharing their whatever they're interested in. that's the perfect thing, because then people know that they're out there, so that if they're interested in that particular thing, they can reach out to the projector and say, hey, I'd love your advice on this, or hey, I'd love to see what you say about this, or I want to see how you see this and to see if I could do this in a better way. And so projectors can be good in any field, but they are just best when they can have that more observation, that bird's eye view, where they can observe. And then when they're invited to speak, or when they're invited to share their opinion, they kind of fly down and they share what they need to share, and they give their amazing advice, they guide, and then they kind of go back to observing. And that's how they conserve their energy, because they really are the great seers of human design. They have a really unique way of seeing the world, because they have that zoomed out perspective, because they're not in that generator go, go, go grind. And so we really, yeah, we need the projectors. Projectors make great healers. They're very intuitive with all the openness. And when they work with fellow generators or manifesting generators, they can go for longer periods of time without feeling tired, because they're going to be borrowing that sacral energy. And so it's always great to collaborate with others if you're a projector, and to take breaks throughout the day to kind of work in little bits, and to take breaks and do things that refresh your energy, because you're not made to go, go, go. You're here to be more strategic with your time. And you'll find that once you start really following whatever your authority is and making proper decisions, that you'll start attracting things that are in more of alignment with your energy, to where you can have more say over your schedule and your day, especially as we go more into like the digital age, where you can set your appointments to have gaps in between, and you can protect your energy more so, and to just take enough time to rest, and to not feel guilty about resting and getting the rest that you need. And so you'll see that this chart has emotional authority. The other major authority that a projector is going to have most often is splenic authority. And so splenic authority, if you have that in your chart, it basically means that you're going to walk into a room and you're going to get a first impression of something, and you're going to get this very specific energetic sense within your being. Sometimes people feel it like a tingling sensation. It's this inner knowing, this flash of intuitive insight that speaks once and doesn't speak again. It's this very instant download of this is right for me or this is not right for me. And you can trust what your body is saying in that moment to be accurate and correct for you. And so those are really the two main types of authority for projectors. Yeah. Do you have a question?
Sorry, I didn't know how to unmute myself. So I have a splenic authority, and I just wanted to get your opinion on something, because when I first learned about this system, like a year or two ago, I kind of really dove in, but then I've taken a big break because I felt so confused by it. But
Yeah.
the spleen is like something I want to understand so much more, and it really resonated with me when I learned about it.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like when I first learned about it, I started to understand why I would get such a strong no to things, and like like before learning about it, I would just override that and make myself, I was a yes person, or like wanting to be nice, or like I never let myself say no to things. So then I would like grow bitterness of like just such discomfort,
Mm-hmm.
because I felt like I didn't understand it and I didn't know how to explain it to people. So I was always really afraid to sound judgmental. And like, for example, my partner, he doesn't get it. And he really thinks like I'm being judgmental if I get like a strong no. Sometimes it'll even happen just like music will come on the radio that he wants to listen to, and my body is like repulsed. I can't like do it. And so I just wanted to know if you had any tips of like how to honor my spleen without like, it's
Without
just
the
so
guilt.
interesting.
Yeah, I love that question, because the thing about the energy centers outside of the head and ajna is that they're always going to be nonsensical. They're not logic based. That's just the nature of them. And, you know, in our society, we're raised from day one to always trust the head and the logical mind and the rational mind. And so if we don't have a reason for the way we're feeling, especially like you said, when it comes to something like music, it's such a visceral, energetic experience that we can't rationalize. Like maybe we can find something to say about it to kind of let the other person in to make sense of it. Like, well, I don't like how this sounds.
But then I just sound judgmental, and I'm like, I honestly don't know. I didn't even know I felt that way. It'll just be like in my body, it feels like a screaming, like,
Yeah.
no.
Yeah. And I really like how you describe that, because that really describes the spleen very well. It's not like the gut response, which is very like, it's just a gut feeling. It's like an expansion or a contraction. The spleen is very visceral, and it feels a little bit different for every projector. Every projector I talk to, it feels a little bit different, but it's a very nonverbal, specific feeling. And yeah, it's just, you know, like at this point, do you feel like you can trust what your spleen is saying? And it's just, you're worried about what others are thinking about it?
Yeah, I guess I feel like I definitely know the no's, and then when I feel a yes towards something, I just automatically go towards it. So I'm not as thinking it through. But I guess I would love to have some way to honor my no's because I feel them, and like I feel discomfort. And so if I'm not able to like explain to someone why I need to leave the room or something, I don't know, then I start to get self-conscious. Or especially with my kids, like I'll just like no, we can't do that. And I have to really, 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 really think about why, so that it makes sense to someone else when I'm like in a guiding position with them, because I don't want to just be this like dictator. I feel self-conscious about it because like my whole family is generators. And I'm a projector, and waiting for that invitation, I really try to do that, but sometimes the spleen is like cutting me or something, and I guess I don't want to force others, but I want to make sure that I can do what I need to do to honor my spleen. And so if there was any kind of like, because like you said, it goes once and then it goes away. But like the bitterness, I feel like that not self thing, it really comes up if I feel like I haven't honored myself, or like then I'm not going in the right direction for me or something, and then I start to be like all confused or just like tense.
Yeah, to me, it sounds like, first of all, you know, it's hard because you're constantly in the field of your kids and your family. And if you don't have that consistent outlet that you can rely on to kind of slop off all of that energy, it can just build and build in all of that openness. And then it can be hard to basically not only discern what you're going to have a splenic yes or no to, but it can be hard to stand firm in what you need as well, because you can just feel burnt out by it. And so having an outlet where you are in your own energy so that you can feel into it more is always going to be really helpful. And the same thing with the emotional center, really noting down what consistently your spleen is saying no to, and consistently what you're gravitating toward, so that you can kind of come into a situation a little bit prepared. of like, oh, maybe I'm going to need to leave this early so that I can let people know ahead of time. And just to protect your energy as much as possible. I've been giving this a lot recently to clients because the energy's been so intense, people are feeling it more. And so what I've been telling people is to really morning and night to visualize your auric field, not as like this like big ball of light, like is usually described in meditation, but to actually visualize your auric field as like a metal sheet, like a metal armor of protection, so that if your spleen does say no to something, if you have to be in that because it's just social graces or it's something that you can't get out of, you're going to have that extra level of protection that you put on every day, so that you're not so sensitive. So it's not like that screaming feeling. It'll be a less intense thing so that you don't feel that pressure to try to explain or try to or have to leave right away. So how I visualize it is basically it's like a metal shield around your aura. And you can even visualize like little spikes coming out. And that's just like an extra barrier that you can visualize so that when you're around all of this extra energy constantly, it's not coming into you so much. Maybe you feel it a little bit, but it's not getting constantly amplified within your being, if that makes sense. And I've just found that to be a really powerful visual. It's something that's easy to see in your head, and I've found it to be very effective. And, as many projector Epsom salt baths as you can get, again, to kind of draw out all that energy is going to be important. But ultimately, if you really own your needs and you know what you just don't like and what doesn't feel good to you and what does feel good, the less guilty you feel, the less people will ask you questions or try to like get at you or try to understand. Does that make sense? Because people can feel the uncertainty and the maybe shyness around it. And the more you just are like, this is the way it is, it's nothing personal, and the less they're gonna ask you about it and they're gonna honor that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, for real. I love these suggestions and I really like the visualization. It like lit me up to just, because like I think when I first asked you about my chart, I'm just gonna show you told me something about how open it is and protect my energy, and that really resonated because I'm like, I do feel like I'm absorbing things all the time and it's not a problem. I don't want to seem judgmental, but sometimes it just overwhelms me. And so I feel like I need to just like get away into that metal shell with spikes. It's like it sneaks up on me, the spleen thing. And then I'm feeling or like absorbing other things, which is wonderful when I'm prepared for it. And like when I can really slowly do what I need to do, but then I get overwhelmed by lots of generator energy, which is awesome and exciting, and I love it. And you're right, like I feel like it is like buzzing to be around that all the time, and I love getting things done with that energy, but then it's like a crash. Yeah, so anyway, thank you. I really love those suggestions.
Oh, I'm so happy it helped. Yeah, it's like your spiritual armor, So that's how you can visualize it. And then you can also visualize, you can literally put your hands over your spleen, which is going to be on the left side of your body, right below your rib cage. And you can just meditate on that energy, because the other thing that you might be feeling, and this applies to all of you, by the way, if you learn about a center and you feel like that center is being overactivated, because even if you have that center defined, it can still become overactivated because it's constantly broadcasting out information. And so in the case of you with your spleen, you can put your hands over your spleen and just breathe into it and just say, it's okay, you can calm down. I see you, I hear you. Thank you so much for telling me, that this may not be right for me. Thank you for protecting me and try to keep me safe, but it's going to be okay, like you're safe. And just really putting some love into that center, whatever center it is, can be really, really powerful, and just see it glowing and recharge. So it's not like constantly scanning the environment and overactive and doing its job a little bit too well. If that makes sense. Yeah. Yeah, that's a great question. I love that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's something that I wanted to mention with centers. I don't think I mentioned this. When you have the center open or white, not only are you taking in the energy, but you're also amplifying it. So that's kind of the strange thing about centers, is you're actually feeling it more than the person who projected that energy out. And so, you know, when people say that they're empathic, what I'm really sensing is that they have a lot of openness to them. And so there's a way, again, to manage that energy by simply visualizing that sheet of armor around you morning and night, taking Epsom salt baths, because salt, the negative ions in salt literally draw out energy. Actually, in ancient times, salt used to be super, super expensive and seen as like a hot commodity, because they knew in ancient times they used to carry a pouch of sea salt on them because it protected their energy field. It has a very protecting and grounding quality. So I actually, I have a little salt pouch. I should have brought it to show you guys, that I'll just carry in my pocket if I'm feeling extra sensitive that day. And I know I'm going for a long drive, or, you know, I'm going to be in other people's energy. I'm a homeopath, and so I'm always in people's energy, shadowing and dealing with clients. And so I found that to be super helpful too. Even putting like, you know, those thick crystals of salt and dissolving that under the tongue can be really, really calming for the nervous system, and can be very grounding and take out all of that energy. So there's so many ways to clear it. And it's just being really good. It's like seeing it as spiritual hygiene, you know, no matter what type you are. In this day and age, we all need spiritual hygiene. And so these practices can apply to anybody, no matter what your type, and especially the reflector that we have in the room. You know, she has all her centers open. Actually, Callie, I don't know if you're still here, but do you mind if I pull up your chart to show people what a reflector looks like?
Go ahead.
Okay, cool. So let's see, I have you somewhere here. Let's see, where are you? Here you are. So look at that. So all of her energy centers are completely open. And so I love showing reflectors as an example, especially with my fellow astrology enthusiasts, because her authority is to wait a lunar cycle. And so reflectors are super impacted by the moon. And so here we are on the Leo full moon, and we have a reflector in the chat. And it's you know, when in all of our charts, when we have planetary transits, your chart is going to look different, and different things are being actually lit up and activated. So your chart, I'm going to pull this up on my phone. Hopefully you guys can see this. This is the energy that we all have right now based on the transits. It's much like astrology. So do you see? We all have defined head and ajna, and we all have defined emotions and root. So, you know, even if you're a reflector, you're going to have those 4 centers defined. So you may be feeling like you can actually communicate your thoughts more effectively and have more of a grasp on concepts and ideas. Everybody's probably feeling more emotional and restless with that root energy. It's like, let's figure this out now. Let's get to the next step. Like everybody I'm talking to, they're tired of being in this limbo in between energy. They want to get to the next step in their life. They want to make it happen and get out of, you know, whatever rut they've been personally experiencing. And so I really recommend the Human Design app. It'll show you the current transits. And it really gives a good idea of how you're personally going to be impacted by the planetary transits and how it's lighting up your chart. And so just wanted to go on that caveat to say that we're all affected by transits, but because Callie as a reflector has all this openness, all this wisdom, she's taking on the energy of the collective and then mirroring it back to us. That's why it's, the type is called a reflector, because it literally acts as a mirror and shows us as a collective where we're going wrong. It shows us our collective shadow. It shows us, being in relationship with a reflector, you'll experience a major leveling up no matter the quality of the relationship, because they really act as mirrors of your greatest potential and also where you need to where you may be going wrong and where you may need to work on areas of your life. And they're amplifying all of this energy. And so reflectors are really, really connected to the seasons and to the cosmos. And they're really, really benefited by grounding and living in tune with the seasons. And they can take a longer time to make decisions because they can feel so differently based on what's being activated in their chart based on the lunar transit. So usually before making a big decision, they're going to wait about 28 days or a lunar cycle, and they'll see that throughout that lunar cycle, they feel a little bit different about something. And so they're waiting for kind of that whole picture to come through of clarity. And of course, that's not always possible to wait 28 days. I mean, we have to live our lives. But when it comes to things that are major, major life choices, that's typically what's advised. Even relationships, before dating somebody, it's usually advised that reflectors go on a few dates and see how they feel around that person. Because the first date and the second date and the third date, it might go completely differently. And that's also, I want to say, if you have your identity center open, that's going to be the case for you as well. How you show up in the world is going to be very, very different based on the transits and based on who you're around. Because you literally take in the other person. You can be very psychic and intuitive and really feel what other people are feeling. And it can lead you a little bit, make you a little bit confused about your own self and your own direction if you take on that energy and amplify it. So that's something to be aware of. People who are reflectors and people with this energy center open, they're profoundly impacted by their environment. And they're going to find that they really need to be in a place that feels good for them for things to click into place, because their sense of self is really dictated by their environment, the people they're around. So if they're in a bad environment around people that aren't so great, they can kind of get off path with their purpose. And so it's just so important for them to be somewhere where they feel comfortable. And they'll know right away what that is. It's like the spleen. It's just, you just know, it either feels good and it flows or it doesn't. And so that's what I want to say about reflectors. Any questions coming up, guys, about your chart, the centers, the types?
I don't want to put anyone on the spot, but I'm so curious about reflectors. I wanted to see if Callie would share a little bit at all about what it feels like, or like what that lunar cycle waiting strategy feels like.
Yeah, happy to answer any questions. It's funny because I seriously cried tears of joy when I started reading about being a reflector, because I was like, this explains so much. Because in a month, my mind changes so many different times because I see things from so many different perspectives throughout the month. Like they say that, part of the month, this is defined, part of the month, this isn't defined. And so I definitely feel what's going on in the cosmic realms. I feel everything that's going on. So I just view things so differently from like one part of the month to the other. And of course, I thought that was more just related to like my cycle, but of course, all of that's interconnected. And so it's just really interesting and really deep the more that I learn about it, and being a reflector for sure.
That's beautiful.
Thank you for sharing. That is really cool to hear.
Yeah.
Great. Well, so does anybody know any manifestors that are in their life that's the type that we haven't covered so much? I think they're about 10% of the population, so they're a little bit more on the rare side. But I'll pull up a manifestor chart so you can see it. And the type that I won't get into so much are manifesting generators, because they're just manifestor and generator combined, but they're more so the generator. But they have the ability to initiate like a manifestor. So I'll share my screen again and pull up a manifestor chart. And so the reason why it's really good to know about manifestors is that basically we are all raised to be manifestors, because manifestors are like that Nike just do it. Like they get these creative urges and impulses and they just go out and they can manifest anything and make it happen really quickly. And that's because they have what we call an energy or a motor center connected to the throat. So you'll see in this chart, he has his throat center connected to his emotions. And so there's a lot of energy here in the solar plexus. So he's going to be very driven by his emotions he's going to be driven by his emotions to express himself creatively in his work. And, I know this person personally, and it's so funny because we'll all be out on a hike and he'll just go off on his own way and we'll see him in like 30 minutes. Like manifestors are really the lone wolf of human design. They like to do their own thing. They want to just be off on their own and go do whatever their little manifestor heart desires. And they really just initiate their own action. And their aura is really, really strong. It's the strongest out of all the types, and it actually has a very polarizing quality to it. So one of my first mentors was a manifestor, and when she walked in the room, people would literally like take a step aside. Like you could just feel a manifestor enter a room because their aura is just so like out there, and like everybody can feel it's like it parting of the Red Sea. It's like everybody parts for the manifestor. And so they're really here to be a polarizing energy. It's like you're either really, really love the manifestor or you really, really don't like them. Actually, the creator of Human Design was a manifestor, and in Human Design, people either love him or they hate him. They think he's like kooky and weird and rude, or they're like, oh my gosh, he's like the best thing that's ever happened to the spiritual community. So they're polarizing because they're really here to shake things up, and they're here to bust paradigms and create something new. And then the generator and the manifesting generator will kind of carry out that vision. So I call the manifestor like the domino flicker. They initiate and get things started. And then the generators will help them see it through on the day to day. Because again, they don't have that consistent sacral energy, but they do have that other, the energy coming from whatever motor center they have defined. And so the motor center is the emotional center here. It can be the heart center, it can be the sacral. And so that's important to keep in mind, that even if you are, if you don't have the sacral, you're probably getting energy from other centers that you have defined. It's just not going to be as consistent. And so yeah, manifestors, their not self theme is anger, because they are so fiercely independent, and they have a lot of times memories as children of their parents telling them, no, you can't do this. No, you can't do that. Go to your room, do this. Like they wanted to just go and do their own thing and be independent. And of course they couldn't do that yet because they were kids. And so they fiercely, fiercely protect their independence, and they get very angry when they're limited by that. So oftentimes they're the kids that get in trouble at school, they're in detention, or because they're just a very specific, pronounced energy that our culture doesn't necessarily appreciate. So it's kind of this weird dichotomy where we're taught to be manifestor initiators, but we're also shamed for maybe taking the leadership position and going out there and being a maverick. So it's a weird dichotomy there. But once they know that they can do whatever they want to do, and if they inform the people that are going to be impacted by it, then they feel that signature of peace, which means that they're on the right track. Because the key for manifestors and manifesting generators is that once they decide to do something, they have to tell people. Because if they do something like they decide to up and quit their job and they don't tell their boss and they just leave, well, there's going to be a lot of people who are upset at them, right? So they have to put in their 2 weeks notice and go through the protocol, or tell their wife they're going to the store, or tell people of their whereabouts, but they don't necessarily need people to agree with them to do something. And that's something that a manifestor has to be okay with, is that not everyone is going to be on board with their vision, and they have to be okay with being disliked, because they're here to disrupt the current paradigm. They're here to be the maverick. And so they're really here to be a powerful force, and they're actually here to kind of initiate the other types into action as well. So there are a lot of great podcasters actually are manifestors or manifesting generators, because there's a certain power to their voice that commands attention and has the energy of authority to it. And so you'll find a lot of manifestors and manifesting generators happen to be podcasters, because they have all that power going to their throat. And so they make a big impact through their self-expression and their speech and their action. And so that's a manifestor in a nutshell. And then the manifesting generator, like I said, they'll have that initiating quality, but they'll need to make sure that their gut is on board first, and they'll still need to wait to respond before they go and do whatever it is that they want to do. And that's the difference there. But yeah, manifestors and manifesting generators, I can spot them from a mile away at this point, because they're always going to be like that entrepreneur that puts out more content than you can even ever consume. Like I know all of us know Eugenia here. Most of us know Eugenia, and she's a manifesting generator, and she's always putting out content. She has so many videos and amazing things going on, and she has all this energy to make an impact and to put out her content. And it's an amazing thing to just see them in action. Yeah.
Have you looked at charts of important people, politicians, CEOs, things like that? I'm curious, are a lot of CEOs manifestors?
There are a lot of manifestor CEOs, but there's also a lot of projector CEOs that I've seen. I see a lot of projector entrepreneurs, because they really want to dictate their schedule. They have a very specific type of workflow, and they want to be able to be comfortable and to be that way, because they just don't fit into the 9-to-5 paradigm. And so I'll see a lot of projectors that really, they're not afraid to do things their own way. And it's something I've been doing more and more, is looking at famous people's charts. As I've gotten into more mundane astrology as well, it's been something of interest for me. So maybe we'll have to have a call where we just go through. You guys can send me some suggestions and we'll go over their chart. I think that would be really, really fun.
I, as a projector, I take care of a manifesting generator, and I feel like that those two things are hard to navigate, being that I'm the caretaker.
I see. Yeah. So the good thing about a manifesting generator is, if they find the things that they really gravitate toward and that that can keep them occupied for long periods of time, they can kind of supervise themselves at a certain point. I don't know what the situation is, like the age and everything like that, but they should fall into a groove where you can kind of be more of that projector observer that's not always engaging with them and constantly having to expend energy, and they can kind of do their own thing with you there to supervise, but you don't have to constantly feel like you have to engage, if that makes sense. that's something that comes to mind.
I feel like for me, the biggest like conflict is always like trying to get her to do things. And she has a very definite like opinion on what she wants to do.
Okay, yeah. And so when that conflict comes up where there's something specific that she wants to do you find it's in conflict a lot with what you want her to do?
Or what she's supposed to be doing.
What she's supposed to
Yeah.
Yeah. How old is she?
4.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Yeah, that's a tough age in general. The thing is that with that amount of high energy, she's going to need something every day that's really going to tire her out. It's kind of like, having like a dog in the house where like they need that daily walk. Otherwise, they're going to keep you up all night. It's very much that energy where there needs to be something to tire out that sacral so she's not like, always in conflict and acting up and being restless. A good outlet for that is really, really important. I know it's kind of hard with all the restrictions right now, but if she has some sort of like really physical activity, that's really, really going to help. Yeah, you'd be surprised, and she'll be a lot better at going to bed when you want her to as well, because that can be the other thing is if that sacral energy isn't used up, then they're not going to want to go to sleep. Whereas if it is used up, they'll kind of just pass out for the night and they won't make a peep, and then they'll wake up really refreshed. So I sense that there's some sort of like too much energy buildup that needs to be released in some way so that she can be active and engaged in what she has to do when she has to do it. There'll be less resistance.
Yeah, I feel like for me, it's like dealing with the anger aspect that's always been really hard. So I almost feel like the activity might help release some of that tension.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I think it will. And to give her some self-discovery of her figuring out what is going to really tire her out and use that sacral energy best. It might take a little bit of trial and error. Do you know what her profile and authority is?
Yeah. She's a 4/6.
Okay.
What was the other thing?
Her authority.
She is. I think sacral.
Okay, yeah. So that's actually good because she's not going to be so prone to the emotional wave, but it sounds like she's setting off your emotional wave instead. So either way, it's going to be a thing, to deal with. But as a 4/6, she's really, really going to need other people her age around her to get that energy out. 4 and a 6 specifically, they're very community oriented and they really suffer when they're not around their peers. So they can definitely tend to act up when that's not present. Especially because the 6 kind of wants to be the leader of the pack as well. Eventually they will be the role model or leader archetype. And so that can be something you're feeling as well, where she wants to do what she wants to do.
She wants to tell everyone else what to do as well. Yeah, so that resonates.
Yeah. So yeah, it's something to tire her out and something with her peers, even if I don't know how it is where you are these days, if she can see people in person or not.
She's in preschool right now, yeah.
Oh, good. Yeah. And it's hard because, I feel like there's not as much physical activity as there should be in school anymore. So she may be have had to be so disciplined and sit still in preschool that she'll come home and be kind of hyper. And you know what I mean? So that may be something too, but yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. And it's just good to see how your charts interact, pulling both of them up and seeing what she has defined and you have open is helpful too. And the other thing that I didn't cover that I wanted to show you guys really quick, I know we're almost at an hour and a half here, is, let's see. So let me minimize this. The other good thing to know about your chart is you see all these red squares and black squares. And so that's where the astrology is coming into play, because all these symbols are the planets. And so what you may not recognize is this one, which is Earth. So this is Sun, Earth, North Node, South Node, Moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, what is that one? Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. And so you're going to have specific energy that's expressing itself through these gates. And so it's really good to get a book like this. I really like this book. I have it, The Book of Lines. It gives just a quick description. It's by Chetan Parkin. That gives a good description of each of these energies and how it plays out through. It has like the astrological ruler as well. And so you can get a feel for how that energy is expressing itself too. So for example, looking at your daughter's Mars or her Mercury or the Venus, you know, how she relates to others would be really helpful. And I really like, if you go to my body graph, you can go to the Rave Mandala view. And you can see it looks more like a natal chart where it has all the planets here. And so you can see where you have the majority of the gates. So in which planet, and that also gives you an idea of what the quality of that gate will be based on where it is in the chart. Yeah. See, stop the share. Yeah, I think that's all I really wanted to cover tonight. I know it's been a long day for some of you. Any last questions before we wrap up?
Like
Nope.
millions, but I don't think I can get them all out right now.
Well, we'll do this again. We'll do this again. I know there's a lot of people who couldn't make it tonight that wanted to. And so I'm going to post the recording of this in Discord. And I just thank you guys so much for coming. I really, really appreciate it. It's awesome to have all of you.
Thank you for giving us your time.
Yeah.